بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful.
اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق.
Recite in the name of your Lord who created.
خلق الإنسان من علق.
Created man from a clinging substance.
اقرأ وربك الأكرم.
Recite, and your Lord is the most generous,
الذي علم بالقلم.
who taught by the pen,
علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم.
taught man that which he knew not.
كلا إن الإنسان ليطغى.
No, but indeed man transgresses,
أن رآه استغنى.
because he sees himself self-sufficient.
إن إلى ربك الرجعى.
Indeed, to your Lord is the return.
أرأيت الذي ينهى.
Have you seen the one who forbids,
عبدا إذا صلى.
a servant when he prays?
أرأيت إن كان على الهدى.
Have you seen if he is upon guidance,
أو أمر بالتقوى.
or enjoins righteousness?
أرأيت إن كذب وتولى.
Have you seen if he denies and turns away?
ألم يعلم بأن الله يرى.
Does he not know that Allah sees?
كلا لئن لم ينته لنسفعا بالناصية.
No. If he does not desist, we will surely drag him by the forelock.
ناصية كاذبة خاطئة.
A lying, sinning forelock.
فليدع ناديه.
Then let him call his associates.
سندع الزبانية.
We will call the angels of hell.
كلا لا تطعه واسجد واقترب.
No, do not obey him, but prostrate and draw near to Allah.
रहीम है। पढ़ो ए नबी सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम अपने रब के नाम के साथ जिसने पैदा किया जमे हुए खून के एक लोथड़े से इंसान की तख्लीक की। पढ़ो और तुम्हारा रब बड़ा करीम है जिसने कलम के जरिए से इल्म सिखाया, इंसान को वो इल्म दिया जिसे वो न जानता था। हरगिज नहीं, इंसान सरकशी करता है इस बिना पर कि वो अपने आप को बेनियाज देखता है, हालांकि पलटना यकीनन तेरे रब ही की तरफ है। तुमने देखा उस शख्स को जो एक बंदे को मना करता है जबकि वो नमाज पढ़ता हो। तुम्हारा क्या ख्याल है अगर वो बंदा राह रास्त पर हो या परहेजगारी की तलकीन करता हो? तुम्हारा क्या ख्याल है अगर ये मना करने वाला शख्स हक को झुटलाता और मुंह मोड़ता हो? क्या वो नहीं जानता कि अल्लाह देख रहा है? हरगिज नहीं, अगर वो बाज ना आया तो हम इसकी पेशानी के बाल पकड़कर उसे खींचेंगे, उस पेशानी को जो झूठी और सख्त खताकार है। वो बुला ले अपने हामियों की टोली को, हम भी अजाब के फरिश्तों को बुला लेंगे। ये पहली 15 आयात सूरा अलग की। This is Reflections with your host Zubair Akram. Today, 12th of April, and Iftar in Glasgow is going to be at 8:24, 21st of Ramadan, with reflections and my guest Sheikh Rizwan Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. أهلا وسهلا مرحبا بكم.
Ahlan wa sahlan, marhaba. Sheikh, Surah Alaq. Today, inshallah, we're going to go straight into these two ayahs, which we have been doing for the past maybe 14 episodes so far. I think this is the 14th episode of Surah Alaq. It's civilizational surah, one of the civilizational surah. Insan we did, and we also did, there was another one we did which we said it is to do with civilization. And this one it's also come about in a time where we needed a lot of explanation how wahi, how um, uh, revelation guards human behavior, and how it is useful to have wahi's intervention in human life. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Today, normally my question starts with this dragging someone by the forelock.
Mhm.
What's the significance of this forelock, and what's the significance of peshani, your forehead? Does it signify something in human kind of makeup in human body, which is of respect and which will be disrespected on that day?
Mm. Yeah, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So we've been kind of in this discussion with the section in the chapter which talks about Abu Jahl, and he was called Abu Hakam before, so it was interesting that the name that stuck with us, Abu Jahl, we know him through his enmity to Prophet ﷺ in the Meccan period. We know him through the episodes that happened there. I mentioned the story probably while we were doing this of Hamza radiallahu anhu, when he was he assaulted the Prophet ﷺ, and then Hamza smacked him in the jaw, almost breaking his jaw. And that was the reason for the conversion of Hamza radiallahu anhu. His anger, it's interesting actually. Saying Hamza's anger and anger for the truth caused him to go into Islam. He had no intention, he hadn't thought about the fact that he wanted to become Muslim until his anger got to the point that Abu Jahl, almost asked him, so what was this got to do with you? If I'm attacking, this for Abu Jahl, the false prophet, but for us, the beloved prophet, what's it to you? And he says, do you strike him when I'm on his religion? So Abu Jahl, obviously, Jahl is to do with intellect. You understand? So you have different types of Jahl. You have Jahl Basit, which is like basic, simpleton, Forrest Gump level, kind of simpleton level, kind of gullibleness. But everyone knows that that other people know, and other people know that that everyone knows that everyone's Jahl is normal. But then there's Jahl Murakkab, which is this kind of arrogant kind of sense where you don't know that you don't know. So this is where it becomes dangerous. And where that happens is the Nasiya, it's the neocortex. It's the place where you can
I'm sorry. I'm just amused with the term Jahl Murakkab. I'm not sure if people understood this.
जूते मार कर उसको निकालो.
Jahl Murakkab, yani compound.
Yeah, because that's so a Jahl Basit is somebody who has empty head. And so Jahl Murakkab has all this stuff in his head that needs to be smashed out through a slipper. That's why George Bush Jr., when he went to Iraq and he made this press conference about liberating Iraq, and there was a journalist who threw a jutti at him, a shoe at him, a slipper.
Yeah.
So basically, my reading of that, a very interesting situation, was that he was trying to get rid of the Jahl Murakkab in the head of in the Nasiya of George Bush.
Jahl's head.
So it's sometimes something as humorous as that brings to mind something very serious, which is the death of so many people on the back of Jahl Murakkab. I think one of the things that people unfortunately don't understand is Jahl Murakkab, which is compounded ignorance, which is then relates to arrogance, has real world effects. So if people are empty-headed, simpletons, no one's going to get hurt, no one's going to get attacked, no one's going to get there's no real world no real world output from that, and no kind of fallout. Jahl Murakkab is the complete opposite. This is the realm of the Dajjal. Okay, this is the realm of the charlatans, where a little bit of knowledge goes a long way in the wrong way. So There's a little bit of knowledge that goes a long way in the wrong way, meaning it creates destruction. Sometimes a little bit of knowledge goes a long way in a good way, which is a simple person knows the fara'id of prayer, and they pray on time, and they keep themselves. They keep, as they say nowadays, keep in your lane. So everyone has a lane. Stay in the lane. If you go out the lane, you end up having a car crash. So this whole thing of nasiyah, which I think you're asking, which is verse number 15, is related to what comes before it, because you have to understand. I think you really have to understand what's happened before this to understand, because you missed something very important, which is kalla. La illam yantahi. And kalla, I kind of, we covered it before, which is most definitely not. So kalla comes twice in this chapter. In both places, if you translate it the same way, you're actually mistranslating. And I would say pretty clearly, when I read kalla in the first instance in the chapter, it's very, very different from kalla in the second situation in the chapter. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, says kalla innal insana la yatgha, no, indeed, the human being is in a state of tughyan, which is an oppressive injustice to themselves. This is more, it comes as an initial statement. It doesn't come compounded with any evidence at all. So it's a weaker remonstration. It's a weaker response to something that's happened before, but there's nothing mentioned, kalla. So it just means indeed no. And you have to kind of think what that is. But when Allah says kalla la illam yantahi lanasfa'an bin nasiyah, and this is a much stronger kalla. It's exactly the same thing. In the Meccan revelation, kalla is one of the ways that Imam Sarkashi says you can identify a Meccan chapter from a Medinan chapter. And the second kalla is actually much more forceful. You won't understand it unless you understand the previous, I would say, 4 verses, which is all about Abu Jahl and the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أرأيت إن كان على الهدى أو أمر بالتقوى أرأيت إن كذب وتولى ألم يعلم بأن الله يرى. That narrative of Abu Jahl, and I mentioned this last time, I think, Abu Jahl and the Prophet ﷺ, and also you involving yourself in looking at this thing, because Allah is actually asking you to check what? Check up on what your view is on this instance where Abu Jahl is basically attacking the Prophet ﷺ. Remember, the situation is that he wanted to stamp on the neck of the Prophet ﷺ when he's praying, and Allah is saying, do you think he's rightly guided, or he's enjoining something that's the path of piety? Do you understand? So he's involving us. So this is going to be very interesting, because it means that we're going into this state of, this chapter is all about education. Iqra. Yeah, we can agree. And education, if you want to become a teacher, you have to go through a whole process of teaching. Learning how to teach. You have to learn how to teach. The Prophet is being told, Iqra, recite, read. In other words, mu'allim. The Prophet is called al-mu'allim, mu'allim al-nas al-khair, the one that taught people goodness. So he is going to be al-mu'allim, and this is going to be almost like his most important kind of hat. Edward de Bono talks about hats, different types of hats you use, and in different contexts you have different personas. The Prophet's most important persona as a prophet messenger is his teaching muballigh aspect. And so when we know that, you cannot follow that through unless you're taught how to teach. Now you have to go through what they call the pedagogy of learning. In other words, you want to convince somebody about something, there's a way of doing that. You have an enemy, you want to turn them around to understand what you're saying, there's a method of doing that. You have a person that queries you, there's a way of giving them information, but there's also a way of getting them to understand and also be a conveyor of that information as well. So what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does in these verses that come right before, you ask about Nasiyah, the reason why I'm going back a bit is because you have to understand what the problem is, such that you don't want to be the person whose Nasiyah has been taken on the Day of Judgment. You don't want to be in a state of ignorance, arrogance, jahl murakkab, compounded ignorant arrogance to the point that you're the one that's grabbed by the forelocks, because this is what's going to happen, because it's not Abu Jahl and the Prophet, it's everybody in the same universal situation where you're just doing it not for the right reasons and without any backing based upon thinking, logic, rationale, or even religious scripture, because religious scripture is understood through thinking, obviously. I mean, there's a problem nowadays is that people's superficial understanding of religious texts is compounding, having real world impact. So when Allah says, أَرَأَيْتَ إِنْ كَانَ عَلَى الْهُدَى, do you think that Abu Jahl essentially and everybody in that situation is rightly guided on the path of truth? Is he on this path, or amara bit-taqwa, or what he was doing was ordering something which is pious? And then the other, so that's one side of it. Do you think he's good? أَرَأَيْتَ إِنْ كَذَّبَ وَتَوَلَّى. Do you think, okay, and the other side is, do you think that he is somebody who's calling lie to something which is true, and he is just turning his back in arrogance, not knowing that God will see him? In other words, what you have here is, for you as an observer, you're given two options. So you're actually asked to become part of the education, me. In other words, Ridwan or Zubair, look, this thing happened historically. There's a person calling to God, worshipping, not harming anybody. Another person, saying that I'm going to stamp on his neck if he does it again. Now, which one out of the two? It's almost like, do you want to be a millionaire? And there's only two options left. You phone a friend and you take one of the options. I don't know how it works, but apparently you can take an option off, or you can do something. I'm not sure if at any point you can have two options. I'm not an expert. I don't think I've ever suffered the indignity of watching a whole episode of that. But imagine you've got two options, and it's saying Abu Jahl was in this scenario with the Prophet. Do you think he was A, on the path of truth, or do you think B, he was calling falsehood and turning back in arrogance? A or B, and you've got £1 million to win. You're going to start thinking. Now, the thing is, we don't have £1 million here. You've got Jannah. You understand? So you have Jannah, and you're basically being asked to make this answer this question, and the host is waiting for you, and the music's playing in the background and all the rest of it. A lot of pressure. Now, how are you getting to the answer? You're getting to the answer through your nasiya, your neocortex, thinking. You're saying this or that. So if it's this one, you're making a calculation. Another one, you're doing another calculation. This doesn't need a calculation, to be honest, because this is showing the stupidity of the comparison. There's no comparison, but sometimes you need to be shown the effects of both things to realize one of them's extremely naive and essentially illogical. Like sometimes people have to be told that very clearly. Things that are normally clear, sometimes people have to be told that very clearly. It's like the Prophet as a mu'allim, this is what he always does. The Prophet always brings out, when he teaches, he's going to be trained as a teacher, essentially. And this is one of because this is the first revelations. This is amongst the first revelations. This is setting the scene for the Prophet being rewired, his spirits and his heart and his mind being rewired to a divine means of convincing and persuading people. It's almost like the art of persuasion. It's like an art. There's an art that the Prophet is going to learn, through which he will slowly be able to turn anything from something mundane into something that is beautiful. People, in other words, he'll take people and he'll turn them, like Umar, he will turn him from an arch enemy to a person who is the one that when he walks down an alleyway, the shaitan turns to the other side. Do you understand? So this quality of changing is something that the Quran is saying we also need to learn, but it's getting us to think. And this is why the Prophet, when I mentioned, the hadith of Abu Umam al-Bahili radiyallahu anhu, a young man came into the mosque of the Prophet and he went straight in, past all the companions, straight to the Prophet and in the presence of everybody, made an announcement, "O Messenger of God, give me permission to fornicate." And because of the abomination of that, the immoral nature of that to all people, everybody started to become very uneasy that he would dare to come to the Prophet to ask this. But the Prophet said, what did he do? He started to get him to think, because the way to persuade somebody is not to tell them you cannot do this. The way to persuade them is to get them to use their mind to work through why they should do a certain thing. And so the Prophet said, do you see? This is almost the same method. Ara'aita. It's almost saying, do you not think that, would you like it if it was done to your mother? What do you think if it was done to your sister, to your, and then the Prophet starts to go through all the permutations of people that are close to him. And then, that comparison of yes or no. He's basically thinking, yes, I would. No, I wouldn't. So he went from the most beloved person to him, which is his mother, all the way to his paternal aunt. And then all of them, he said no. In other words, when he said that, the Prophet said, وَكَذَلِكَ النَّاسِ. Once he's convinced himself, the Prophet said, the people are the same. They wouldn't like that. And so the Prophet, Abu Umama radiallahu anhu said that the young man came, insistent on doing it. He left, never even thinking about it. In other words, he left. They knew him from the city, that he changed the way he thought. And there was that impulse, which is a shaitanic impulse, which is based on jahl, not thinking about the consequences of things, not thinking something through, is a disaster. And what we know from the Prophet ﷺ is that he essentially started to teach people based upon a specific philosophy in pedagogy. And so if you start to think that, you'll start to get the power of the second kalla. Kalla la illam yantahi la nasfa'an bin nasiya. No, indeed. I can't even translate. How can you translate the second one?
Indeed. He does not
because
desist.
You've already established the stupidity of it, and the culpability of Abu Jahl and people like him, and the moral case against them being established is different from the first kalla. The first kalla is just saying, no, indeed, human beings, because of what we know of nature, are oppressive or unjust.
So, we the listeners, we have to kind of almost map this information, which is historic information, to a current character, either a character or several characters. So Abu Jahl is now a character.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a character, persona of characters that come all the time. So when I'm reading this, I'm seeing people in front of me that I know. I'm not seeing Abu Jahl. I've never seen him, but he's persona of that. But the thing is, unless you do that, the Quran doesn't make much sense. You can't interact with the Quran unless you do that. But the thing is, it doesn't require knowledge, it requires wisdom.
And his act is that he tried stopping something which is correct, which is right, with the claim that he won't allow because he will lose power. Is power struggle? Is the lust of power, or
with Abu Jahl? Yeah, I mean, Abu Jahl is from Bani Makhzum. Bani Makhzum is through generations was in conflict with the Bani Abdul Manaf because Bani Makhzum was obviously the kind of the warrior tribe, and took on the role in Meccan society of being the warrior preservers of the peace and protection, whereas that is, as I said before, that's like, in terms of civilizations, that is a lower level to the religious preservation and the kind of spiritual moral leadership, which is far higher, because the moral leadership would always, in all societies, order the military leadership, because it carries moral weight. And this is, so Abu Jahl's sense here was a sense of entitlement, I think, and also the fact that the Prophet was able to make so much headway into Meccan society as well, that he was able to consistently bring people in, the best of people. This is what was actually worrying to Abu Jahl as well. Like, the best of people were veering towards the Prophet, and because the best of them were veering towards the Prophet ﷺ, it meant that there was much more danger to Meccan society the Jahili society. And so Allah here, this is after the first revelation. So the first revelation comes to the first 5 verses roughly. It stops, and then events take place, other chapters are revealed. This comes once the enmity towards the Prophet ﷺ is going up a couple of notches in terms of intensity. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he's bringing this in, he's trying to get us to think about this is Arabia at the time. Now you ara'aita, like you yourself, and remember I mentioned this in aspect of it, which is the Prophet ﷺ as well, he can see as well. Do you think that he was on guidance and so on and so forth? So ara'aita here is do you think, but the second ara'aita actually I feel is even if you translate it, the second ara'aita, which essentially means do you not see or do you see, actually that is also a different type of ara'aita. The first is more for you to think.
Ara'aita in kadhaba wa tawalla.
Yeah, the second one indicates you should not be able to see, because once you look at him, he's not on guidance, he's not on taqwa, so therefore the other option, it's true. Do you understand? So when Allah says ara'aita in kadhaba wa tawalla, it is an emphatic indication, do you not see? It's almost as if you have to show the power of the rhetorical Arabic. And this is why the Quran is such a beautiful book. The same thing, if you put it, even I guarantee if I look, and I'll do this after we finish. I've got, I think, 2 translations with me here, but I'll have a look actually, because I'm sure some translations must have picked up on the difference, and I guarantee actually that they haven't.
So there is one in front of me. It says, "Did you consider what if he gives the lie?"
What's the first? So what's the first? You need to
Seest thou if he denies truth and turns away?
No. What's the first ara'aita? So yeah, I'm saying this. The translation of the ara'aita is different.
Ara'aita, did you seest thou and did you consider both? So ayah number 11. Ara'aita in kana ala al-huda. Did you consider what if he is on the right way?
Okay.
And then Ara'aita in kadhaba wa tawalla. Did you consider what if he gives?
So they're both the same.
And then
so whose translation is that? Do you know?
This is Tafhim al-Quran, towards understanding Quran. And then there is Yusuf Ali, English translation, which is seest thou, and then seest thou, both.
Exactly the same. Yeah. So I mean, I would venture to say that it's a big issue. Translation in Quran is it's subjective, but it's not subjective, because the rhythm of it ranks up. The rhythm and the power of it. The second ara'aita is really not allowing you to think. It's pushing you into the point that he is lying and he is turning back, not knowing that God sees him. In other words, it's done. It's not asking your opinion anymore.
Point proven.
Yeah, do you understand?
In Urdu, it is totally different.
I see.
So even the English translation is not faithful to Tafhim al-Quran's Urdu translation.
That's what I was going to say. When you said that, I was going to say that the Tafhim al-Quran translation is a translation of the Urdu. The Urdu, I guarantee, Mawlana Maududi rahimahullah will have slight difference in emphasis.
तुमने देखा उस शख्स को जो एक बंदे को मना करता है. अराअयत الذي ينهى. And then the next अराअयत is not तुमने देखा. अराअयत इन कान अला الهدى. तुम्हारा क्या ख्याल है अगर वो बंदा राह रास्त पर हो. यानी in this it is तुम्हारा क्या ख्याल है अगर वो बंदा राह रास्त. It is inviting to think. Whereas
so actually yes, you reminded me, there's the ara'aita before, there's actually 3 ara'aitas. I was looking at the 2 to tie it into Nasiya, but the first one is more like can you see?
Yeah,
do you see the person who's forbidding the servant when they pray? That's just ara'aita. Like, it's not asking for opinion, it's saying, oh, can you see something? Oh, can you see that person there? Look what he's doing. He's stopping that person from praying, basically. Look, there he is. Okay. And then ara'aita, the second one is, okay, let's think. Do you think he's not? Did you think he's on the path of piety, or he's ordering towards what is good? And then ara'aita is not this, again, it's not the same. It's saying this fait accompli. It means that he is not. He is actually calling a lie and he is turning away, not knowing that God sees him. So this is what I was saying. The Quran, that's 3 ara'aytas, they actually completely mean they're going in different directions. Because it's building
what do you
up.
think? The second one and the third one is, do you think? Do you not think? Do you not think?
Yes, but the second one is what's your opinion? And then the third one is a rhetorical ara'ayta. Now, do you really think? Do you really think? Do you understand? So this is the thing, the Quran, this is like, most people pass this over and iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, and it's I think when we were discussing whether we do this chapter, I think you were of that opinion that it's a quick run through the chapter.
Not at all.
Yeah, so the thing is, when you read it and when I think about it when we're doing the show, I kind of think, yes, there's a kind of pedagogy of explaining things, like Allah is telling us how something is working, how education is working. Like when you're teaching somebody, you can't be static in your learning, and Allah is teaching us that when we're observing something and making a decision about something, you can't be static. You can't say, this is my opinion, I'm not open to change. Sayyidina Shafi'i rahimahullah, he used to say that my opinion is true with the possibility of being wrong, and another person's position is wrong with the possibility of being right. And that's an open mind. Yeah, absolutely. And that's the civilization we built. I mean, unfortunately now it's not. It's your party or your viewpoint or your school of thinking or your ideological or your whatever it is. It's just.
So this is the first. Imam Shafi said, "Mera khayal, meri rai mein khata ka ihtimal hai."
No. He said, my opinion is true, haq.
हाँ, मेरी राय हक है और इसका एहतमाल है कि उसमें खता हो,
गुंजाइश है,
उसमें गुंजाइश है, उसमें एहतमाल है कि उसमें खता है.
And the other person is wrong with the possibility.
उसमें एहतमाल है कि शायद वो ठीक हो.
Yeah, and so when he speaks with somebody, he's knowing that I'm sure that I'm right, but I might be wrong, so he's going to have to prove it. And if he proves it, I'll join him or her. That's the way. This is the way, as my son would say.
All right. Okay. At this note, Faisal, let's take an ad break, inshallah, and we'll be back with more reflections. Surah Alaq, 96 Surah of Quran with Sheikh Rizwan Muhammad, 21st of Ramadan, 12th of April 2023. Iftar today is at 8:37, I think. Going for an ad break. We'll be right back. 8:24, sorry.
Ramadan 365, sound for the soul.
रास्ते कितने ही मुश्किल क्यों ना हो, जब कोई साथ दे तो मंजिल मिल ही जाती है. गजाली एजुकेशन ट्रस्ट गुज़िश्ता 25 सालों से लाखों बच्चों को स्कूल में ला चुका है. आपकी मदद से पाकिस्तान आगे बढ़ सकता है. हर बच्चा पढ़ सकता है.
दुनिया को जगाना है, सबको बताना है. रमजान में मसलों को रास्ता दिखाना है. With years of experience and an extensive portfolio, Shield Associates provide an excellent accountancy and bookkeeping service. So if numbers and deadlines are giving you a hard time, come along to our office on 215 Albert Drive. Shields Associates, the accountants you can trust.
The famous Jasset's Halal Pies are finally available in Scotland. Freshly baked Jasset's Halal Pies come in 12 mouth-watering varieties, like steak pies, chicken and mushroom pies, and cheese and onion pasties. Also a variety of ready meals. There's something for the whole family, and all HMC certified. At House of Halal and other good outlets. House of Halal, 76 Tradeston Street, Glasgow, G5 8DZ.
Radio Ramadan 365, sound for the soul.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Radio Ramadan 87.7 Reflections with your host Zubair Akram and my guest Sheikh Rizwan Muhammad, 96th Surah of Quran, Surah Alaq. And we, just before the break, Sheikh said something and I thought I will ask him after the break. Sheikh said the first 5 ayahs of Surah Alaq were revealed and then things happened and then other ayahs were revealed, and then these ayahs were revealed, which form Surah Alaq. And Surah Alaq has 19 ayahs. That's correct. 18. No, 19. So 19 ayahs in total. So Sheikh, this is the usloob, no, usloob is different. So we have to understand that the Quran, all the surahs were not revealed in one go, correct? Sorry, you're on mute, Sheikh. You have to unmute. Sorry. Yes.
Yes, I was muted. Unmuted. So yes, we talked about the fact that the Quran was revealed. Tanzila is this form that it's perpetually moving in terms of its revelation, coming down and being revealed. And so one of the reasons for that is it gave individuals the ability to interact with the Quran based upon events and circumstances and changing environments and challenges. And so that helps. Allah says, كَذَلِكَ لِنُثْبِتَ بِهِ فُؤَادَكَ. So the Prophet is told that we did this, giving it over a period of time to make it firm in your heart. So when something happens for a reason, it becomes much more memorable. So if you learn something in a memorable environment, it becomes memorable. Do you understand? So your association with something is associated with the event itself. That helps you understand it. So you might have been at an event and somebody said something. You can remember the event and you can remember the thing that's been said. Okay. And so the Quran was revealed piecemeal over 23 years. And this is one of the meanings of Najm, when Najmi idha hawa. When Allah says and swears by the Najm can be the star, or it can be the gradual, I think Muhammad Asad mentions, or something around the lines of the gradual unraveling of the Quranic revelation, something along the. So the gradual process of being revealed, munajjama in Arabic, means something that's given one bit at a time. And so what happened is the first revelation was the section Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, and kalla innal insana la yatgha, the kind of section which talks about human beings. That comes later, and it starts to manifest a discussion about human nature and the opposition that came out of Iqra. When Iqra was revealed, and then the Prophet started to teach it, and then people realized that this person was a prophet of Allah and he was teaching and calling people. Then the sense of entitlement, which is Abu Jahl is a prime example of that, and he's called the Fir'aun of this community. It becomes obvious.
So, Sheikh, do we go back to this thing just to trying to picture in our heads what actually happened? So there was a power struggle. Was it that Prophet ﷺ was empowering the underdogs of the society? Is it what happened? And people were now following Prophet ﷺ, and the existing chiefs, they felt their reign is in danger. And is this this is how it played out? And then the battles, and almost like it was a battle scene, the whole of Arabia for 20 years.
I mean, you could say that's a Marxist reading of it, but that's true. It is, threatening the livelihood of the Quraysh, they felt that the reason why Mecca was important was a crossroads of trade, but the reason it was a crossroads of trade was that it had this sacred sanctuary, which kind of gave it some kind of moral authority as well. And so the fabric of society, the way that people interacted, the slave class with the ruling class, the tribal kind of, I mentioned Abu Umam al-Bahili. He's from the Bahil tribe. The Bahil tribe is most of the Arabian, almost like the bottom, like you had like 40, 50 tribal units. This is at the bottom. It's the point that one of the poets says, إِذَا كِلَ لِلْقَلْبِ يَا بَاهِلِ أَوْ الْكَلْبُ مِنْ شَوْ مِي هَذَا النَّسَبِ. He said that if you said to a dog that you belonged to the tribe of Bahil, it would have howled out of anguish from the disgrace of that description. So even an Arab dog wouldn't accept to be from the Bahili tribe. And so Imam al-Bahili is praying next to the Hashimi Qurashi, the Makhzumi in Medina. And the Prophet is giving honor to him. So at that point, obviously everything's shifting. And when everything's shifting, the people in power throw everything at it. And this is why Abu Jahl, remember, Abu Jahl, he was the one that gave the prize of 100 camels to capture the Prophet ﷺ when he went for the hijrah, the flight to Medina Nawara. Suraq ibn Malik heard about Abu Jahl's bounty of 100 camels. That's like you're done for life. You're set up for life with that. And he basically, Abu Jahl was putting everything into stopping him. And nobody even thought that you could make, but once he did that, every bounty hunter was after him. Suraq ibn Malik got in sight of Abu Bakr and Umar radiallahu anhu, and almost about to get him, and his ride started to sink into the sand. And the narrations in Bukhari are not. Some of them say that it was solid land where he was going, and it just sunk into the solid land, or it was sand and it just sunk into the sand. And when Suraqa saw that, he saw it was a miracle, that was divine protection, and that all of a sudden the 100 camels of Abu Jahl becomes nothing, to the point that Suraqa started to fear for himself and said to the Prophet ﷺ, write me something that will safeguard me. In other words, I know I'm trying to catch you as a bounty hunter, but I think I'm the one that needs to be protected from you and given safety from you. And the Prophet wrote him a document, got the guide who was guiding Abu Bakr and himself to write a document of safety for him. And he said to Suraqa, he said, how are you going to be on the day that you wear the bangles and the bangles of Khusro? He gave a prophecy, which is, Abu Jahl, with arrogance, is giving 100 camels. If you're true to your faith, you will get far greater. And during the Khilafah of Sayyidina Umar, the Sassanid Empire came to its knees. The booty of that, the loot of that, came to Medina Nawara. And Umar called for Suraq ibn Malik. And when he came, he put the cloak of the Persian emperor and the bracelets, the golden bracelets of the emperor on Suraqa's arms, on his wrists. And that's something that's interesting, because what you're saying, the picture, what's happening, it is a power struggle of sorts. Not that the Prophet wants it, but his teaching will lead to a recalibration of how power is. It's not as if he's struggling. He's not going for an election.
Exactly. He's not going for power, but the result of the sought following will give him power.
Yes, and a changing of guards of how things are done, and that's why it's such an interesting thing that this section that we're looking at comes later on, because it's starting to get the Prophet to teach. It's getting the Prophet to learn how to convince and teach. Because if Allah is telling us, look, have you seen, do you not consider, it's getting us to be participants in learning. So it's much more ownership of knowledge and your conclusion than if you're told to memorize, for example. So when I was studying, this is a side note, you had to memorize everything. But I would always say, and ended up doing, I would memorize, but I would say, look, I need to analyze, but I need to argue with you as well. Like with students, I need to be convinced that what I'm memorizing is worth memorizing. Otherwise, what goes in without conviction leads to eviction, as I just made up now. So what goes in, I say that before it disappears. What comes in without conviction? Did I say that? Whatever comes in without conviction ends up with eviction.
With eviction, yes.
That's
Oh.
pedagogy. That's divine prophetic pedagogy. Because, and this is why, the Prophet, I mentioned the story of the person who asked for permission to do illicit acts. It's something that is one of the most beautiful leitmotifs of the Prophet, that when somebody used to come to him to ask him, he would always get them to be convinced of the answer or to understand the answer. So there's a very famous hadith in Bukhari of one of the women from the tribe of, it was Juhayna. She came and she said, my mother had pledged that she would do the Hajj and she passed away. And she said, should I do Hajj on her behalf? So the answer is obviously yes or no. But the Prophet doesn't stop at yes or no. What he does is he gets her to be convinced about it. He says, yes, but perform it on her behalf, but tell me, ara'aiti, okay, you think, this is ara'aita, ara'a, understand, like, this chapter is getting you to think. The Prophet says to her, do you not think that if your mother had a debt that you would pay it? Like, don't you think, like, you think about yourself, you're asking me, should I perform Hajj on behalf of my mother? I've said yes, but think about yourself. Do you not think if your mother was in debt and she was indebted to somebody and she passed away, would you not try and alleviate that from her? Because that, it might have weighed on her shoulders. And she said yes. So the moment she said yes, the Prophet said that fulfill the due of Allah, because the due of Allah has more right to be fulfilled. So, when she probably left, she didn't just go say, the Prophet told me I need to do Hajj for my mother. She was convinced because she knew why she should. And in fact, he almost like is saying, you actually know the answer. It's almost as if out of his compassion, he would tell people something that's obvious, but he would tell them, but then remind them that actually you can actually know the answer to this as well. So this is one of these ways that the Quran here in this section, is telling us about human beings, is telling us about how they think, how they interact, how they make decisions. And also it's starting to get us to move away from just indoctrination. So, it's kind of not just about, hear and accept. It's about hear, think, accept. And this is why it'll come on to the Nasiyah, because the Nasiyah is a place where everything comes together. It's a place where if you are arrogant, it's usually based upon this, we started right at the beginning, I kind of mentioned Jahl Murakkab. It's always centered around this compounded ignorance of something. That, and this is why, kibr and arrogance, actually, they say it relates to information containment and knowledge more than anything else. It might relate to wealth, it might relate to other things, but in intensity, because a human being knows that the thing that makes them better than anything else in creation is their ability to think. Arrogance in the process of thinking is one of the worst, which is why scholars warn about it so much. Scholars warn themselves about what they know is the worst spiritual disease for them, which is arrogance in knowledge.
Which is arrogance.
In knowledge. Arrogance. In the process of knowing, which is why the thing that will be pulled, that we use to pull Abu Jahl, will be the place that, comprises of the collectiveness of that knowledge, which is Nasiyah, the kind of forelocks. You imagine pulling somebody's hair, because that is what took you to where you are. The arrogance, the murakkab, the Jahl Murakkab. And so, this is interesting that the Prophet, he's always testing students. He's always developing students. The Quran here is doing the same thing. It's trying to get us to think. And, it's one of the things that, when I was studying, it was one of the things that teachers used to do. But, Ibn Farhoun, very famous Maliki scholar, he's got a book called Durrat al-Ghawas fi Maharat al-Khawas. It's a really fascinating book. It's all about legal, what do they call them? Kind of, riddles, legal riddles. And he mentioned something interesting. He mentioned the hadith of Prophet ﷺ, which, it's very famous hadith. Ibn Umar was sitting with his father and a lot of the elder companions of the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet said to them, what, in a conversation, he said, what is which tree is closest to the believer? the Prophet could have just said, believers should be good, do good actions, and be beneficial to people. That's what he wanted to do, isn't it? He didn't. He said, which tree is like a believer? And so, first of all, you have to think, what's a believer? What's so good about a believer that the Prophet is going to say that we should think about? And okay, what tree is there out there in creation that resembles the believer? And so, is this not getting the nasia, this forelocks, the neocortex, to think in a way that is good? The Prophet trained people. And so Ibn Farhun said, one of the amazing qualities of the Prophet was that he trained people, but also teachers, they should throw out riddles and complex issues to their students so that they can train their mind as well. Because you can't just go into battle with, a simplistic understanding of things. And this is why ilm nowadays is so, devastated and, of not much use, is that people don't know where to place knowledge. They don't know the context of where to place knowledge. And so obviously it's Ibn Umar, he was a very intelligent young man. He said, he kind of thought about it. He thought the palm tree, the date tree, because, there's something there. It's evergreen. It gives goodness. It's benefit because you can, it doesn't like shed its leaves. It gives fruit. It gives shade. He's basically saying, look, the believer, somebody gives goodness out to people. He protects people or she protects people. And it's always something that gives benefit, not harm. Because some trees, Glasgow, it's not autumn, is it? It's coming after a non-existent summer. And then all of a sudden we have autumn. Then all the kind of drains get cluttered and the floods. And there's Glasgow is not a good place in autumn in that way. But he's sweeping up leaves and all the rest of it. It's good in Alhamdulillah. Many blessed green city.
I like it.
No, it's blessed green city. Absolutely, you can't do takfir on our city.
on our city. Yes, autumn leaves.
We believe in our city, inshallah.
Yeah. People who are listening, Surah Alaq. Just a short Urdu translation of this ayah that today we covered. तुम्हारा क्या ख्याल है अगर वो बंदा राह रास्त पर हो या परहेजगारी की तलकीन करता हो? तुम्हारा क्या ख्याल है अगर ये मना करने वाला शख्स हक को झुटलाता और मुंह मोड़ता हो? क्या वो नहीं जानता कि अल्लाह देख रहा है? हरगिज नहीं। अगर वो बाज ना आया तो हम उसकी पेशानी के बाल पकड़कर उसे खींचेंगे, उस पेशानी को जो झूठी और सख्त खताकार है, उस पेशानी को जो झूठी और सख्त खताकार है. Sheikh, this we inshallah we're going to finish this episode with this bit here, that it is pre-decided that this forelock is false and full of
falsehood.
It's falsehood.
So the reason why it is that is because it's jahl murakkab, it's the whole thing.
So this is murakkab, right? It's khatakar and it's falsehood.
Yeah, so
it's full of errors and it is also false.
Yeah, so the thing, it's false, full of falsehood. It's not. It's insistent on falsehood, because Allah says if the person does not desist, in other words, his actions, which is saying that he's doing acts of goodness and piety, saying that he's ordering to good, if he doesn't stop, Allah says, we will surely drag him by the nasiya, this kind of the place where everything that is intelligent comes to forelocks. But the forelock is then described as not just the forelocks, it's a forelocks which has a quality of nasiyatin, kadhibatin khatiyah. So it's a deceitful for. In other words, what comes out of it is deceitful. It's not true. It's there to undermine the idea of truth. Deceit is that you feign something that's not true and make out to people that what you're saying is true when it's not. Kadhiba. It's a sinning, deceitful forelock. Khati'ah means one that's missed the mark. Knowledge is there to hit the mark. When you get a question, what was that question I asked you about? If you want to be a millionaire. I said, imagine you're a person that you have to decide whether Abu Jahl is right or the Prophet ﷺ. And there's one sawab and khata. Sawab is A, you get your million. I said Jannah, you get Jannah, or you get B, which is the other place, Jahannam. And so khati'a means it got it wrong. Why did it get it wrong? Jahl murakkab. It's compounded ignorance. Knowing something, thinking you know it completely. So you got what you in an argument, for example, or a discussion, you take one aspect of a discussion, and then that's everything that's true to you without looking at the other side. So this is what this is the age of that black and whiteness. There's no sense of proportion, there's no sense of contrast as well. So here Abu Jahl is being described as having nasiyatin kadibatin khatiya, a forelock which is kadiba, which is untruthful, which is deceitful, which is untrue, which has missed the mark. And so if it's talking about that, is the other side of the coin is you as a believer will not be taken by this if your nasiya, which is your forelocks, are truthful, sadiqa, musawwaba. They're something that hits the mark all the time. Like when you do something, you say something, you're saying it for the right reasons, in the right way, at the right time. That is going to hit the mark. But if it's deceitful, that's not the case.
Now, finally, so this is a big, massive character, Abu Jahl. So it is head of the state. And when we are reading Quran, what we are thinking is this story belongs to someone who is a lot bigger than who I can ever be. For a normal Joe, can we be sorry for me, can I be this character ever in my life, and I have to be mindful of this?
The thing is, if you're deceitful, you're that person. If you keep missing the mark, you're that person. In any interaction you have with somebody else, and there's a sense where one is right, one is wrong, you don't want to be in the wrong side. And you don't want to be wrong on the side on the back of having compounded ignorance of something. In other words, knowing something but insisting that only what you know is correct. And also by knowing something and thinking that knowledge, which is a small amount of everything, is everything, and then dismissing everything else. Okay, and that is the thing that Abu Jahl was thinking. I mean, probably might have been thinking, we want to preserve the stability of our past community. We want to continue the stability of the worshipping of idols, for example. In some way, what is he doing? He's making a logical reasoning for that, which is we're okay in society as we are. Is everything going smoothly? We don't want any disruption. The slaves are enslaved, and the women are, enslaved, and everything's going as it is, and we can basically, usurp people's wealth. Traders can come and we can take their wealth, and we don't have to do anything. All of that is something that he's logically thought about, but he's not thought of the other side. Is it true? Is it just? Is it healthy? Is it godlike? Is it moral? No. So that is when you look at the other side of the argument. It's like children or students, when they write an essay, argue whether the state of Israel is a moral state. Now, if you write that essay in secondary school and then you just parrot out all this propaganda from one of the sides, which is yes it is, and brought so much prosperity, this is nasiyatin kadibatin khati'ah. This is that. And I've actually watched some Muslims saying the same thing about the state of Israel. So it is that situation where you take one thing, you run with it, and you basically sell your soul to the devil. And Abu Jahl essentially did do that because, he is as much as mentioned. It's almost like every time there's an antagonist with the Prophet ﷺ in the revelation, it's almost known that it's Abu Jahl. And this, the arrogance gets to the point, Zubair, that he gave all these camels as a prize to get the Prophet ﷺ. But in Badr, the Battle of Badr is a very interesting story. The caravans, about to be taken by the Prophet ﷺ, they escape. Word gets back to Mecca and they decide not to go to Badr to fight the Prophet ﷺ, because the reason why they wanted to was because they thought their wealth was at threat of being taken. Now, when message comes back to Mecca that the caravans have escaped the Prophet ﷺ, or the Muslims who were sent, Abu Sufyan basically said, that's good. We don't need to prepare anything. Abu Jahl said, we're going to go. And we're going to dance. We're going to go to Badr. We're going to go for 3 days. We're going to slaughter animals. We're going to eat, feast. Women are going to dance for us.
And that's arrogance.
And then he said the Arabs will, until eternity, know that we danced on Badr. And he danced on Badr. He danced to his death, to the point that he was slain by, finished off by Ibn Mas'ud. He was injured by another companion, but he was killed by Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, who used to torture and mock. Do you understand? And so the arrogance, look at that. Tagha is like, when you build, Pharaoh built this tower, when it gets to a certain height, it's going to fall. And so the more that he got to that point, and even Hind bint Utbah, she says, "Nahnu banat al-tariqi namshi ala al-namariqi," a very famous poem. She said, "We are the daughters of live in the skies. We walk upon the clouds. They are our cushions." The arrogance. Do you understand? And once you get to the point where you think you're walking upon the clouds because of who you are, there's only one way down. There's only one way. There's only one direction.
Absolutely.
And that's it. Subhanallah. So this is the thing. Why it's you were saying, what does it mean to the Joe? The Joe is always possibly going to think that they are what we call the bee's knees in Glasgow. I don't know if you have that anywhere else, but the bee's knees. And if anyone knows what that means, where that phrase came from, let me know, inshallah.
Reflections, end of today with your host Zubair Akram and my guest Sheikh Rizwan. Iftar in Glasgow is at 8:24 on 12th of April, 21st of Ramadan. That's coming to an end. Please remember us in your du'as. We seek yours, and inshallah we'll keep you in our du'as up until tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.